to serve society.
Okay. To serve society, good. Then to keep the records to share with the others, expose the research. Right, very good. So now it is very clear and evident that once you are into your research journey, publications are very important. And to publish or is to make the content available to the public, while the specific use may be varying among the various countries. And it is usually applied to the text, the images, or various audio visual content, including any of the paper, research paper, any article in the newspaper, magazines, or maybe catalogs. And in the simplest form, I must say that the purpose of publishing the original research studies is to disseminate the information. We need to give the information to the others, the results of the experiments which we are doing during our PhD program. And then we need to inform the audience about the new concept and about the new advances in the technology or a particular scientific field. So what are the benefits of publishing? Because when we are, in the teaching profession, or might be after some time when we are in the corporate sector, maybe I would like to be a professor, maybe I would like to have an interest in the research. So there are a number of the benefits when we are starting with the publication. And before we are moving for the best practices which are happening today, we must know the benefits of the good publication. So when you are going to publish your data in good journals, it can give your work visible among the other researchers in your field. And it helps others. It gives an urge others outside of your immediate circle, that your contacts, your colleagues, and these journals make your work more discoverable. That yes, you are doing something new, and you really want that others should know that what you are doing in your research work, and it will create an interest in the interested readers in the same field. So I think publication is a very good thing when we are going in our research, and the reasons is that you are going to get your credit, right? When your research is publishing in a good journal, any in the newspaper, any article, you are going to get the credit of that, and publishing with that scientific data that is citable. So you are going to get the citation, and then it is peer reviewed, and you are going to get the recognition for your journal. So when I'm talking about that, what are the reasons or what are the benefits behind that, and how we are going to go with the publication with the best practices, you need to see that your data should be reusable, right? It is very important that when you are going to start your research journey, your data should be reusable. It should be reused by the other researchers. It will create an awareness among the society. It can be discoverable on the time. It should be having that accessibility that whenever I need to check that particular data, I can go on those journals, that those are the good publications, and I need to use it in my citations. And peer review, and one more thing, you are going to get the expert service, that when I'm going to go with my research journey, I need to have various experts. I'm going to have the guidance of my guide, my other colleagues member, that how I'm going to proceed. So I think publication is very important, and everybody who is coming on the FDP, they all are talking about the different types of the publication. Now the question arises, what is publication ethics? So I think everybody knows that when you are going for the publication, the ethics checklist is very important. Why the term ethics is so important? When we are in the school, our parents guide us with so many things, that these are the ethics in the society, how you are going to do such things in the society, so that it will not harm the society. It will create something, benefit for the society when you are doing something for the society. Ethics are something which you need to follow the rules and regulation while you are living in a society. Schools के अपने rules and regulations है, और कॉलेज में जब आप जा रहे हैं उनके अपने कुछ रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस है, एंड यू आर फॉलोइंग दोज रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस. Ethical practice should always be there when you are living your life in a school or maybe in the college, then in your research journey. So some ethics are required during the publication, and those ethics are the standard code of conduct. So you might heard the term code of conduct. So what do we mean by code of conduct? The code of conduct is how you are going to behave, what you are going to supposed to do, what you are not supposed to do, you are not doing that. So ethics is a standard of code which guides us as a researcher, that you need to act responsibly and you need to follow such guidelines for conducting and publishing your research. Your always main aim is that you need to work hard during your research, that how it is going to be for the betterment of the society. So ethic is something that your main aim should be always that you are adding something to the existing knowledge for the betterment of the society. Your prime importance should be on your primary objective, that why I am joining my research journey, why I am now into this profession. So rather than giving on the options as a secondary options or the purposes, you need to see that what is your primary objective when you are joining as a teacher, as a assistant professor, then associate, then as a professor. So when you are starting with your journey, you need to give your importance to your first primary objective and not to the other secondary objectives. Secondary objectives may be that I should have good grades during my course of work, or maybe I should have a better job. Then I should have good appraisals during my office, during my university conduct. Then I want to get only a degree. Then maybe sometimes we have publication pressure because of our colleagues, and there is a lot of pressure nowadays in teaching fraternity that you need to have good publication. But these all are the secondary purposes. So must remember that your first primary objective, that why you are doing in the publication, why you are doing your research, and when you are doing your research, these ethical standards should be must followed. And these should exist to ensure the high quality scientific publications, public trust, the scientific findings, and you give that the people receive credit for their work and the ideas. So you must know the awareness of the good publication practices. So now we are moving on to the publication practices, and the various authors have given the various definitions. I know that you have already known that how these ethics are so important, and these ethics works as an academic discipline. So this is a checklist that now it is going to be a discipline concern, and you are going to do your research responsibly by following a set of guidelines for publishing your research, and it is going to give the benefit to the society. So these are the few importance of the ethics, that these are the norms. First of all, you should know the norms to promote the aims of research, such as you should have that knowledge, truth, and avoidance of the error. So if you are going to choose a particular topic, it should be of your interest area, but sometimes due to the pressure, maybe or anything which is happening in the society, but if you are having that interest, only then go for with that particular topic. And research involves a lot of cooperation and coordination among the disciplines and the institutions. So we must follow these ethics, rules, regulation. You should know your accountability, your mutual respect, and fairness. And only then this research is going to help or build the support for the research. And people must likely to fund your research project if they can trust that your work is of quality, and they are going to give you some consultancy projects or funding if they are seeing that your topic is nuanced and you are going to help the society. And definitely the data which you are work, the topic on which you are working, it is going to give the benefit to the other researchers as well as to the society. So finally, many of the norms and the research promotes the different types of moral and social values, and as a researcher you must follow as your social responsibility that when you are doing that particular research, you are not going to harm any of the complies with law, any of the public health and safety, animal welfare, and you just remember your human rights, and you need to work according to the ethics. So I have just made one of the publication ethics checklist, that why this checklist is so important. So when we are saying the ethics checklist, you must have proper approval and consent. Now, when you are sending your research paper in any of the journal, you must have that approval and the consent with all of you, that, and you should know, you should ask yourself such questions that do you have this approval of a relevant regulatory authorities for the publication? Have you registered for some trials? Have you documented the informed documents that the data is authentic and you have the ownership, you have that accountability for that data? Then you need to check your data accuracy, that is there any manipulation in your data, in any of your material, your equipment, or you are using some data, or you are using some process. You should check double or thrice. You can check that data accuracy when you are going to use such things or some data in your research papers. So when you are going to quote something, proper references should be there, and before you are going to quote, you need to check the accuracy of that particular data. Plaque check is very important. Nowadays, in very good journals, everybody is checking your reports, your plagiarisms through the help of Turnitin. Some are using the SEO tools, but Turnitin is going to give you the authentic result. And before you are going to send, you must check the self-plagiarism. And that self-plagiarism will give you that the data should not be fake when you are using. And when you are using those data, you need to check that it is not the prior work of somebody you are using. And when you are quoting somewhere, proper reference should be always there. Then you need to check the frauds, that any of the research paper when you are sending somewhere, so it should be not free from the frauds. You are not taking or using somewhere else data, and you need to be very specific during the authorship. So if I'm writing a paper under the guidance of my guide, if he or she is helping me, so definitely I need to quote their name, but with proper permission. So if my guide is allowing me, that I must use their name because he is helping me, he's guiding me throughout my journey. Without proper approval or the permission, I'm not going to use the name of the other co-author. Maybe I would like to join some research papers. I would like to write some joint paper with my friends, with my peer group, with my colleagues. And definitely, if I am taking the guidance of my guide during that research work, I must tell them that I'm going to send this paper with the co-authorship under this name. And if you like to have your name, because as you have helped me, so you need to check with their permission. And if they are giving the permission, you must write the name of your guide. And sometimes there happens a conflict of interest. So this is the very important term, conflict of interest, and I am going to have a full-fledged lecture on this topic, conflict of interest, which I am going to cover in the next best practice. So these are the ethical principles. When we are talking about the research, you should be honest. Your work should have full of honesty. Your objective should be clear. You need to have that integrity in your work, and you have to be very careful when you are, working on such platform. You need to be open when you are writing something. Your work should be transparent. It should be free from biasness. You are accountable. The work is going under your name. So you need to have that accountability. You need to have that thorough check that whatever the things we are giving, definitely you are accountable for that particular task you are submitting. Because there are so many issues related to IPR, intellectual property rights. We cannot use the another's data. We cannot. So there are so many issues of, patents or copyrights or trademarks. And you need to work hard on your own work so that there should be confidentiality in your work. And when it is going to be published, it is in the good journal and you are going to get the credit of your whole paper. You need to be socially responsible because ethically, when you are doing something for the society's betterment, it is going to help the other researchers. And we all are sailing in the same boat when we have started the research journey, right? So these are the few principles. Now, moving on to the best practices. So my topic was scope and vein. So what is scope? So if I'm going to talk about the journey so far, if I will say who is going to help me during my best practices, who is going to help me if my data is misused, if any of the editor is not, giving the recognition for my proper paper. So COPE is what? What do you mean by COPE? COPE is going to be the agency, or you can say COPE has developed comprehensive guidelines for, finding the retractions and any of the corrections in research papers, which serves as a guide for journals and publications agency. So let's say how COPE work. The full form of COPE is committee. C stands for committee. O stands for on. P stands for publication. And E stands for ethics. Yes. So I am repeating again. COPE is Committee on Publication Ethics. So COPE was founded in 1997 to address the breach of research and publication ethics from both the sides. If you are breaching something, they are not going to publish your paper. So an editor having a reviewer as an editor, they have the full right. And the same obliged with the researcher, that if you are going to get any of the problem with the researcher, reviewer, or any of the, the editor of the journal, even you can complain under this particular committee. So it is a voluntary body which provides a discussion forum and advice for the scientific editors. It aims to find the practical ways of dealing with the issues and to develop the good practices. So you need not to worry if you are having any problem. If I'm sending my paper somewhere and the editor is, taking time, and after taking 1 or 2 years, they are providing me the reviewers' comments. They need not to be rude. I need to work hard on those comments. And again, I'm going to republish my paper. But COPE as an agency is going to help us. It is a discussion forum open for both the researcher as well as the editor. And it aims to find those ways that how we can help the research fraternity in the teaching profession. So intellectual honesty is very important because it should be actively encouraged in all the medical and the scientific courses of the study. And even it is used to inform the publication ethics and prevent the misconduct. So I'm rightly saying that if any of the researcher is going to face any of the research misconduct, we can complain the same thing under COPE. And it is with that in the mind, the guidelines have been produced. Now the question arises that how these guidelines were developed. So it is very important to know that when we are talking about the best practices, how these practices have been developed. So the guidelines were developed from a preliminary version drafted by the individual members, and they are working hard as in working in that particular committee, which then submitted to their extensive consultation. And the committee is going to address your study design, the ethical approval, then your data analysis part, then your authorship, the name you are using in that particular paper, any conflict of interest, the peer review process, redundant publications, because if you are publishing the same data in your journal, so it is the problem of that editor as well as of that journal. If researcher is doing the same thing, it is again wrong on the part of the researcher also. So COPE is going to justify all such activities, that your paper or journal should not be published again and again as a redundant practice. And then they have to talk on the plagiarism part. They have to work on the duties of the editors, the media relations, the advertising, and the most important thing, COPE is going to help the researchers if any of the editor is doing the publication misconduct. So it is one of the best practice, or you can say the ethical practice, which is going to safeguard the work of the researchers. Moving on to the guidelines of a good publication practice, I must say that the Committee on the Publication Ethics, the full form of the COPE, it is an international forms for the editors and publishers of the peer-reviewed journals that provide the code of conduct. So I have already told you what is code of conduct, what is important. The code of conduct is going to tell us what is good for us, what is bad for us, what to do, what not to do. So do's and don'ts in the research work. The best practices guidelines that defines the publication ethics, advises the editors that how to handle the cases of research and publication misconduct. So it is one of the very good practice. Even if your paper is in a, you have sent your paper in a very good journal, and the journal is, you are mailing them and you are resending your paper. But it is very important that once you have sent your paper in one journal, you are not supposed to send it anywhere. I just saw last year in our international conference, one of the researchers used the same paper, presented the same paper. It is already published in one of the good journal, and in next year, same paper with the another title, they are using the same paper. So it is a very bad practice. How you are ethically be so wrong? Research is something that it is going to give the knowledge, and you are helping the society in increasing the existing knowledge by giving more views on that. So if I have done my research in 2011, the another person is going to help the society by giving the new things into that, by adding new things, and they are submitting their work in 2015. Then another person is going to contribute after 15 till 18. Then in 2023, there are the plenty of the data which is coming on the same topic in 2011, then 2015, then 17, then 20, then 23. So when you are doing such good practices, it is going to increase your research profile, and it is definitely going to help you in the career. And you must follow such publication ethics, because when the COPE is working, they are working on such ethical approvals. They need to check the statutory and ethical improvements, then informed consent, then the data manipulation, the research fraud, then they are working on the plagiarism. Simultaneously, you are not supposed to submit anywhere your work, then duplicate publication, then your paper is self-citation, consent of reproduce the published material, and ethics of the authorship and the conflict of the interest. And what are the various guidelines? I have already told you. And now one by one, we are going to talk about these guidelines under COPE. So I have already told you that COPE is going to cover the study design, the ethical approval, the data analysis, which we are using, the authorship, the conflict of interest, then your peer review, then your redundant publications, publication after that, plagiarism, and the duties of the auditor as a, when you are writing something as a researcher, you are submitting it in a good journal. So what are the various duties of the editors to cope with those journals and how they are going to work hard for the publishing of the good data? Nowadays, every editor is responsible that whatever the research they are publishing in their journals, they need to be thoroughly checked. They need to be plagiarism free. And these are the very important guidelines given by the COPE. And as an editor, you cannot go with the publication misconduct. So we are going to talk about these guidelines now in detail. First of all, when I'm saying that a study design, so what is study design? That ethical approval should be needed? Yes. If I'm saying that a good research should be well justified, it should be, well planned, it should be appropriately designed and ethically approved. So I'm rightly saying that when you are going to conduct your research, the standard should be higher. You cannot follow the lower standard and it may constitute the misconduct. And when you are doing your research or you are lower the standard of your research, it is not going to give you a help in making your career lifelong. Don't go for the shortcuts. Always work hard, and definitely when you're working hard, you are going to get that good fruit in your basket, and your work is really, commendable, and it can be used or further cited by the other researchers. So in case of the study design, when you are going to say that your work should be ethically approved, there are some rules and regulation under the COPE, and they are going to check what are the action plans behind that. Your research protocol should seek to answer the specific questions. Definitely. Nowadays, when you are going to, targeting a particular journal, you are going to read their guidelines, that the paper should be according to those guidelines. Proper वो mention होना चाहिए, introduction किस तरह से mention होगी, अगर आपके उसमें chapters में diagrams है तो आप किस तरह से उन्हें show करेंगे, आपका proper उसका एक justification होना चाहिए when you are writing your review of literature with your analysis part, with your research methodology, and so you must follow those research protocols and you must answer those specific questions, and then only you are going to collect the data on the basis of the guidelines given by that particular journal. Then in your design, the protocols must be carefully agreed by all the contributors and the collaborators, including the appropriate participants. So when we are going for the primary study, you are going to request others to fill your questionnaire, and you must need to follow all the protocols, and you must need to agree that all the contributors and the collaborators, they have checked that the data is authentic, and the final protocol should be a part of your research record. Every agreement, maybe any of the statistical issue should be considered earlier. And when we are saying a formal and the documented ethical approval from an appropriate constituted research ethics committee is required for all the studies involving the people, the medical records, and the other related issues. The next is going to be the data analysis. So the guideline under the COPE is, what do you mean by data analysis? Everyone is going to collect the data to justify your research work. Some data is going to be secondary, some data might be primary. So if I'm going for the primary data, I need to have those questionnaires filled by the society. If I'm doing some research in finance, so already the secondary data is available. But most important thing, that the data should be appropriately analyzed. But the inappropriate analysis doesn't necessarily amount to misconduct, but some kind of fabrication or falsification of the data, which is going to give a birth of misconduct. So I must say that you must know what is fabrication and what is falsification. Fabrication, that when you are using fake data, so it is ethically wrong. And falsification means that you are using the data, but you are misleading that data. If your results are not coming in a significant manner, sometimes you use the data, you manipulate the data in your own way. So that manipulation of data comes in falsification. And fabrication is that when you are using the fake data. So your data should not be fabricated and it should not be falsificated during the time when you are doing the research. So what are the action points taken by the COPE during this if your data is not correct, if the editors are not properly checking your research work? They are going to check your all sources, methods used to obtain or analyze the data, including all the electronic as well as the pre-processes. And that should be fully disclosed, because when you are going to explain the detailed explanation, that should be, provided for further exclusions. The methods of analysis must be explained in detail and referenced, if not in a common use. And the most important thing, that when you are, discussing your whole section of the paper, it should mention any issue of the bias which have been considered and explain how they can be dealt with in design and interpretation of the study. During the authorship, there is no universally agreed definition that who is going to be the author, how many authors should be there, although that there are many views on that, but it is always advisable that when you are writing a paper, minimum authors should take the responsibility for the particular section of the study. So maybe you should be 2 authors, 3, or not more than 4, because otherwise you are not going to get the work or credit for that whole work 100%. In many of the universities, if you are writing the paper with the 2 or 3 or 4 authors, you are only going to get 0.7%. For Scopus or Web of Science, let's say if the score is going to be number 7 or number 6, you are going to get 6 marks for your whole paper, or maybe 7 marks for your whole paper. You are not going to get that whole 7 marks. You are going to get the paper according to the square root, that how many of the authors are there, and you are going to get your work accordingly. So the credit is going to be divided among the authors. So it is always advisable that you should start writing with your guide and then your peer groups. But so many authors is only making that confusion, and only the people who are having good knowledge in that, you can use their guidance, and no more authors should be there in those papers. It is always advisable. And the action taken by COPE here is that the award of authorship should be balanced, the intellectual contribution to the conception of that particular knowledge, then the designing of that particular framework, that how you are writing against any of the collection of the data and your routine work, careful readings of the target journal. So it is advisable always, that it is always advised to the authors that you should carefully, read the target journals, who are going to be the target audience, who are going to be the readers, and to avoid the disputes over the attribution of the academic credit, it is always helpful to decide early on the planning of your research project who will be credited as an author, as a contributor, and who will be acknowledged. Otherwise, once the work is published and then there is so much of the confusion, then there is a possibility of publication misconduct happening. Now, the next guideline under the COPE is going to be the conflict of interest. Okay, the topic is very interesting because if you have started your research journey, it is going to help you that while you are writing, books, the papers, how these guidelines are going to help you further in doing good research. And if any of the misconduct is happening, these guidelines you can easily follow. You can give your complaints to them and they are going to listen to that, and you are going to get the better solution for your misconduct of publication. The next guideline is here for the conflict of the interest. Now the question arises that what do you mean by conflict of interest? Sometimes it is going to be a very confused term, the conflict of the interest. Conflict of interest maybe comprises those which not be fully apparent and which may influence because of the judgment of the author, reviewers, and editors. So sometimes it happens that when you are targeting a particular journal, we knows the editor, we knows those reviewer, and might be there is some biasness on the part of the reviewer or the editor, that if you are knowing them, in person, you are going to get the biasness. And if your paper is not so good, if your work is not so authentic, only because of knowing them, maybe the conflict of interest arises and they are going to publish your paper in that journal. But ethically, it is very wrong. You are doing so much of hard work and another person's paper is not so good, the data is not so authentic, only he or she knows the reviewer, only they knows the editor, and they are going to get the benefit of that publication. So is it worthwhile? The answer is no. So sometimes when there is conflict of interest, what to do? What are the different actions? So such interest where relevant must be declared to the editor by the researcher, authors, and reviewers. Editors should also disclose the relevant conflict of interest to their readers, and if they are in doubt, they should disclose. Sometimes editors may need to withdraw from the review, the selection process for the relevant, submission. That for this particular paper, I am not going to be the reviewer. Send this paper somewhere else, so that the researcher is going to get the proper justification for that paper and they not feel that there is some conflict of interest happening. The conflict of interest may be personal, the conflict of interest may be commercial, it may be academic, or it may be financial. So two types of conflicts are there. One is financial, another one is going to be non-financial. Financial include, any of the consultancy projects or any of the research funding, any of the stock, share of a particular ownership of that particular company, or any payment for the lectures, travelers. So anything which you are getting in the monetary way, those are the financial interest. Non-financial is going maybe It is not in terms of monetary, but non-monetary, any of the gift which is in kind, any of the non-monetary benefit, that if some person is recommending you somewhere in the job, right? So those you need to see the conflict of interest, maybe financial or non-financial, and you must avoid such situation. And in that case, you must see who are the reviewers, who are going to be the editors. Maybe sometimes it happens that you are not knowing your reviewer, but if you know the editor, and some chances of biasness would be there, you need to report that if something is happening with the publication misconduct, or you need to send it somewhere else to that journal. Let's talk about the peer review. Now, what do you mean by peer review? When I'm saying peer reviews are those external experts, they are chosen by different editors to provide the written opinions. Thoroughly, the reviewer is going to check your paper with the aim of improving the study. So those working methods are vary from journal to journal, right? Why I'm saying this? Because every researcher is doing so much of hard work when they are talking about good research. And when you are sending your paper, the editor is going to choose those, the reviews from different committees with the aim of improving the study. Maybe the journal's way of working may be different, but some use often the procedure in which the names of the reviewer is disclosed together with the full or the edited report. So sometimes it happens when you are going to get the reviews from the different, journals, the name of the reviewer is going to be there, full name or maybe editor half name. And what is going to be the action taken by the Pope under the guidelines? Suggestions from the authors so as to who might act as a reviewer are often useful, but there should be no obligation on the editors to use those suggested ones. So maybe some kind of biasness is there if I'm going to choose my reviewer. As a researcher, it is always dutiful that you should work hard on your work. And sometimes there is biasness among that. So it should be fully, on the part of the journal agency or maybe the editor, that who are going to be the reviewer for that particular paper. So the duty of confidentiality here is very important because it is going to assess your manuscript and they are going to be checked by the expert reviewer that and when it is going to be extended, maybe 2 reviewers or maybe 3 reviewers are going to check, it is going to give the authenticity of your work. I remember when I was doing my research or PhD from NIT Kushetra mutual funds, my one report of research is there been to a foreign researcher, and one is going to be an Indian professor, and both are going to check the report and they are going to give their authentic reviews on that particular my PhD work, my thesis. And then I checked, and 1 or 2 reviews really give me a new guideline, and then my thesis is becoming so unique at that time. 1 or 2 more chapter, they just talked on that and they just told me, and really those reviews helped me in making my work authentic as well as different from the other researchers. So definitely when we are going to talk about the peer review, it is a good process, and with the help of many minds brainstorming, you are going to get so much of good work, and nicely you are going to done such reviews, you are going to incorporate. Definitely you are going to get the benefit of that particular good research. So the journals should always provide the regular audits for their acceptance rates and the publication time. So it is guided by the COPE, the Committee of the Publication Ethics, that journals should publish the accurate descriptions of their peer review, selection, appealing process, and everything. And they provide speedy, accurate, unbiased and justifiable reports, so that a researcher should not go beyond that term, that you are not going to get the results. Nowadays, many of the journals are not giving you the answers so early. They are taking 1 year, 2 years for the publication, and maybe they are having so many of the journals, but they should increase their reviewing process so that a researcher gets their answer. Whether it is going to be published or not, it should be on time. Otherwise, we can send it somewhere. So let's talk about the redundant publication. That is again very important. When we are talking about the redundant publications, these publications occurs, when two or more papers without full cross reference share their same hypothesis. It is possible. Surprisingly, people are using the same hypothesis, same data, same discussion points, and same conclusion. So I have already given you the example. One of the researcher presented the paper here, published the paper in a good journal. Next year, same paper in the another conference. So how it is ethically, correct? It is ethically wrong. The redundant publication is only giving you bad name, in your career. When you are using the same data, hypothetically, it is wrong. Then why you are doing the name as the research? Then it is not research. It is that you are copying the same data. You are using the same discussion. So under your name, when you are going to already take the credit, once it is published or it is presented, you cannot use that redundant publication again and again. So what are the action points taken by the COPE under the guidelines? They say that the published studies do not need to be repeated unless the further confirmation is required. So the previous publication of an abstract during the proceedings of the meeting, they doesn't, preclude or the subsequent publication, but full disclosure to be made at the time of submission. You cannot say that only on the basis of abstract, only on the basis of one page, summary of your paper, you are going to give that publication into the say yes, or you are not going to give them that mail regarding that we are going to publish your paper. Before, you are going to give them full heads up to that particular paper. An editor should check the full paper. Republication of the paper in other languages, it is acceptable. That if you are writing your same paper in any other language, it is promising. It is acceptable. But same data, same journal, but with the same data, same discussion, same review of literature, but another journal, it is not appropriate and it is not approved by COPE. At the time of submission, authors should declare or disclose all the related papers, the language, or the similar paper in press, that this is my work and I am going to submit this work and under this name, under this journal. Let's talk about plagiarism. Nowadays, whenever we are submitting the data, we are submitting our paper into a good journal, always everyone talks about plagiarism. What is plagiarism? You are going to check the authenticity of your paper. It ranges from, unreferenced use of others' published data. It is wrong. Any others unpublished ideas, including the research grants, application to the submission under new authorship of a complete paper, and sometimes in different language. So it may occur in any of the stage of planning, research, writing, publication. It applies to the print or electronic versions. So what is the guideline provided under COPE? The action point: all the sources should be disclosed. We cannot use any other's data. We cannot disclose the fact without using proper references, without proper illustrating materials should be used. And most important thing, when you are using the data of someone quoted by someone else, you need to take that permission. You need to give their name in bibliography. You need to give their reference check, and you need to check, write that proper source. That is very important. Last but not the least, here in the guidelines under the COPE, the duties of the editors. Most important thing, what are the duties of the editors? Yes, I'm talking about the duties of the editors, not the duty of researcher. Everyone coming here is going to give you, the discussion or the knowledge that how as a researcher you will work. But I am going to tell you that how the COPE is going to give the guidelines that how an editor is responsible for your work, which is going to be published under their guidelines. So let's talk about the duties of the editor. The most important part, editors are, they are the owners of those journals. They usually take over the journals from various editors, and they always want to hand over the journal in a good shape. So whenever they are going to give you the reviews, after proper review check, when you are resending your paper, maybe the shape of that paper you have sent earlier, it is going to be much beautiful than you have sent it earlier. So most of the editors, good editors, they provide the direction for the journal, and they provide or they are making a good, strong management team, and they will build such a good relationship with the researcher. They must consider and they must balance the interest of many constituents, including the reader's interest, including the author's interest, then the staff, the owners, the editorial board members, advertisers, as well as the media people who are, doing the advertisement for your journals. But it is very bad if, some journals, they are, emailing you again and again that it is going to be a good journal. Remember one thing, good journals are never going to email you anything regarding that you need to publish your data. You need to go on their websites, you need to check their guidelines. Only then, with the proper authentication of your work, you are going to follow those guidelines, and then you are going to submit your work. But if some, predatory journals, they may be mailing you again and again, just, submit your paper with so much of ACP, the article processing fee, you can get your data published. Remember one thing, good journal editor is never going to email you. They are only going to email you when some reviewer are going to give the reviews, and when they are going to inform you that your paper is selected for the publication. So you need to check. So now, what are the action points for the duties of the editors? COPE has given the guidelines, and in these guidelines, the editor decision to accept or reject the paper for publication should be based on the importance of the originality of your paper, the clarity of your paper, and the study relevant or according to the theme of that particular journal. So it should be bias free. The next duty is for the editor, that editor must treat all the submitted paper as confidential. And when a published paper is subsequently found to contain the major flaws, the editor must accept responsibility for correcting the record predominantly and promptly. So wherever you are seeing the major flaws, you can tell them during the review, and an editor must check that the work which is submitted by the researcher should be peer reviewed before the publication. Otherwise, there is going to be bias. right? I am submitting my paper, my another colleague are going to submit the paper, and they are going to get the report that their paper is going to be published. So the editor should give me the authentic report that why they are not publishing my paper, what is the reviews given by the different review committees, so that I need to check on those corrections and I can make my paper improved to get it published into a good journal. I hope the guidelines under this are, clear to everyone. So the most important thing that when you are submitting your paper, it should be authentic. It should be free from biasness. And COPE is definitely going to help the researcher in many of the ways I have already discussed: the study design, the ethical approval, the data analysis, the authorship, conflict of interest, very important, peer review, redundant publication. Do not use the publication in somewhere else or same data with the same name. That is wrong. Plagiarism free. And in the various journals, they are allowing you 10% of the plagiarism, 20% of the plagiarism. So you need to think, or you need to work hard when you are going to check your plagiarism. And there are various duties of the editors I have already shared with you. The next best practice, which I'm going to share with all of you, is the guidelines on the good publication practice, which is by WAME. So the full form of WAME is World Association of Medical Editors. So when I'm saying the medical journals aspire to select or thorough peer review, the high quality science. To achieve this, the entire medical review, peer review, and the publication process must be thorough and objective, and it should be fair. Almost every aspect of this process involves the review, that you are going to follow those ethical principles and decisions, and which is very important for the readership when you are writing something. And when you are reading a good journal, the trust of the readers, authors, researchers, reviewers, editors, readership, research subjects, funding agencies, administrator of public health policy, all these are the stakeholders of the good journal. So these all are the stakeholders which helps in making the journal good. And then as a researcher, if your paper is authentic, if your work is so much of hard work you are putting into that, then nobody is going to reject your paper. So let's talk about how to handle the reviewer misconduct. It is very important that if some kind of reviewer misconduct is happening, it can range from minor issues such as rude comments, unconstructive reviews, to major issues such as appropriation of author's idea or data. So I am correctly saying that once you are going to get the reviews of the reviewer's comment should not be rude or unconstructive. Wherever they are giving the reviews, definitely the reviewer should give such reviews which is going to help the researcher in doing the research in an appropriate manner. So if it is possible, definitely you are going to get that review. You are going to take that review in a positive manner, and you are going to make the corrections as soon as possible, so that you can easily give it in the publication again. So how to handle the reviewer misconduct? What are the duties of the editor? The COPE and WAME has given that as an editor, you entrust the reviewers. I'm sure that after completion of your PhD, many of you will be the reviewer for good journals. I'm also a reviewer of 2 journals, and it is my duty that whenever I'm writing a good research paper, I must appraise that particular researcher. And if any of the minor things which I want, that my language should be in a proper manner, so that it should address the present situation, and a reader or a researcher should put that comment in a positive manner. So, as an editor, you entrust the reviewers with a high level of responsibility, and they are the chances given access to the privileged information, the unpublished research, and their recommendation can sway the publication outcome. But unfortunately, there are some rare occasions when the trust is misplaced. Minor problems are relatively easy to respond to. Delete the rude comments and do not invite reviewers again if they supply poor quality, late, or unconstructive reviews. And there may be other instances where editors receive the complaints from the authors about the reviewer misconduct. So it is very important when somebody is doing that misconduct with the researcher, you have one authority. You can do your complaint under COP. And as an editor, if you are going to be the editor of some good journal, so maybe some kind of the errors maybe happened because of that publication process or maybe the review. So you must need to check those rude comments, and you are not going to use the reviews of those reviewer again and again. And if the reviewer is not replying on time, it is not the mistake of the researcher who has submitted the paper. It is, the reviewer is not doing the work on time. So it is very important that you are going to avoid such misconduct as an editor. The foremost important thing that is very, very important, that when I'm talking about the, predatory publisher or the journal. What do I mean by predatory publishing? हमने बहुत सुना है फिशिंग के बारे में, publishing, some of the deceptive publishing, or maybe some of us are exploited because of these predatory publishers and journals. So tell me, have you ever crossed that any of the journal is predatory and they are asking the fee or the article publishing fee, and they are misusing or misguiding you? So yes, such predatory publishers or journals are there, and in lieu of some money, they are misguiding. They are publishing the redundant publications. They are charging huge exorbitant prices or fees from the researcher. So whenever you are writing good research paper, just check on the UGC CARE listed journals, UGC CARE 1, UGC CARE 2, choose the best journals, check their guidelines, and whenever you are writing good papers, just check the guidelines of those papers, that you must follow the guidelines, and accordingly you are going to write. So what type of predatory publishing nowadays we are facing? They are called as the write-only publishing or the deceptive publishing. It is an exploitative academic publishing business model that involves charging the publication fees to authors without checking even the articles for quality and legitimacy, and without providing the editorial and publishing services that legitimate academic journals who have their open access or not. So you are not going to say that these journals are even very redundant, and they are just charging the money from the researchers and publishing the papers without reviewing them, or maybe some researcher is copying somewhere. They are not going to check the plagiarism part, fabrication, falsification. They are doing it everything in those predatory journals. They are regarded as a predatory because the scholars are trickled, they are tricked into publishing with them. Although some of the authors may be aware that the journal is of poor quality or even fraudulent, but sometimes it happens that there is so much of pressure in my PhD that I need to have good journals. Sometimes we are going through the process of shortcuts, and we also indulged in the publication of such predatory journals. So new scholars, maybe from developing countries, are said to be especially at risk of mislead by these predatory journals. And I was reading an article last year that it is in the newspaper Hindustan Times, that according to one study, 60% of the articles published in predatory journals receives no citations over the last 5 or 6 years of the period following the publication. Yes, 60% of the publications are never going to get the citation. So it is very bad. Your name is not cited somewhere. You are doing such hard work, but only in the pressure you are sending your paper in such a bad journal. So it is always better that when you are targeting good journals, start doing that hard work, start collecting that knowledge, and then use it in a proper manner. And believe me, when you are going to get your work with full hard work, that smile is going to be different, that credibility is going to be different. And when you are going to say that you are going to publish in a predatory journal, maybe you can see these symptoms, that the editor of these journals, they are accepting the articles very quickly with no time. If I am sending my article today, Monday, they are going to give me by the end of the day, or maybe on Wednesday or Thursday, or by the end of the week, that your paper has been selected, and so on this number you will give the the fees for the processing. Or maybe your paper is not up to mark, but they are giving you the reply. Sometimes they are accepting with the article fees. Aggressively, they are campaigning for the academics to submit the articles on the editorial boards. They are appointing the fake academics to the editorial boards. आप देखोगे तो बहुत सारे ना फॉरेन ऑथर्स उनके नेम होंगे, फॉरेन ऑडिटर्स के. इंडियन ऑडिटर्स भी नहीं है, मतलब एडिटर्स नहीं है, फॉरेन एडिटर्स होंगे जिन्हें हम जानते नहीं है, हमने उनका नाम कभी सुना ही नहीं है. एंड दे आर listing the academicians as a member of their editorial boards without their permission. Yes, without their permission, they are using their photograph, they are using their initials, and they are not allowing the academics to resign from the editorial boards. And they are mimic the names of those people or those editors in most of their established journals. And they are misleading the claims about the publishing operation, such as the false location. They are using the wrong ISSN numbers, the fake numbers. And they are citing the fake or non-existing impact factors. And sometimes it happens, they are saying that paper is, their journal is indexed somewhere by academic social networking sites, the research gates, like the ISS numbers, the DOIs, and if they were in prestigious or reputable biographic, their database. But these journals are predatory, and they are not going to help you in making your career in a good manner. So these publishers, they are going to prioritize their self-interest at the expense of the scholarship. They deviate you from the best editorial and publication practices. So remember one thing, shortcuts are not good in helping. They are not going to help you in making your career ahead. And sometimes these predatory journals use the, indiscriminate solicitation practices. They are sending you the repeating mails. They are sending you, the messages that, our journal is open for this month, and you are going to get your data published in the back date, maybe within the next 30 days, and their all claims are fake. So as a researcher, I'm just giving you the information, yet you need to check on the UGC care listed, and when you are writing the predatory, whole list would be there, that these are the journals which were earlier in the list of Scopus, UGC Care 1 or Web of Science, and now they are predatory, and now they are not into the category of good journals. And how to identify these predatory publishers? You must check the author fees, should not be there. Quality check, you need to check thoroughly. Or ISS number, DOI number, proper prior review committee you need to check, and you need to check their ethical approvals. So I must say that I have told you the best practices, that how it is going to be helped with the help of, CAPE or COPE or WAME, and how these are going to help you as a researcher. And you need to avoid, few important things. In the last, I want to say, you need to avoid the term data fabrication. You need not to actually use the fake data. You need to avoid the data falsification. That means, as a researcher, you are doing the experiment, but you are changing the data. So please never manipulate the data. Plagiarism, thoroughly checked, taking your ideas, work of the other scientists without giving them credit. It is unfair and dishonest. And as a researcher, when you are going to become the professor of any university or lecturer in any of the good university, you are not going to give the good knowledge to your students, and you are not going to be the idol for your students. So copying even one sentence from someone else's manuscript, it is very bad. That has been already published, and without proper citation, you are not going to use their work enough. Then avoid the multiple submissions. So as a researcher from last 18 years, I must advise that it is unethical to submit the same work again and again, and doing such waste of time, shortcuts, peer reviews, and you are avoiding your reputation in the long run. Then avoid the redundant publication. That means you are using the same experiment, combining your results with the another. You are making the robust papers in few days. It is more likely to be of interest of a specific journal. But remember one thing, editors are likely to reject a weak paper as, they suspect that it is a result of redundancy. And you should avoid the improper author contribution, or you can say attribution. If your friend, your colleague, your guide, they are helping you, you must name everyone. All listed authors must have the significant contribution to that research in their manuscript and approve that it's all claim. And if you're claiming that this paper is mine, and if you are not doing it, you are not going to get the benefit of that particular paper in the long run. So don't forget the list, that everyone who made the significant contribution to your paper, it may be any of your student, it may be of any of your lab technician. Do not gift the authorship. I'm repeating again, do not gift the authorship to those who have not contributed in your paper. So there is one, agency with the COPE and WAME, the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. They have given the detailed guidelines on the authorship. You can easily check. That is the term ICMJE. ICMJE. They have provided the complete guidelines on the authorship, and that is going to be helpful in the long run. And many of the journals have tools and processes in the place to identify the researchers, and they engage in the unethical behavior. And if you are caught, your manuscript may be rejected without the review, and your information, your institution must be informed that you have conducted such thing, and it is going to ruin the reputation of you in the long run. So as a researcher, as a professor, I must say best of luck to everyone during your research journey, and publish good papers, and you are going to get the credit in the long run. And wishing you a good day. Thank you. So now the forum is open for the questions.
Scholars, if you have any query, any doubt related to this topic, you can ask.
What is ICMJB? So when I'm talking about, the good practices given by the various agencies, COPE is one of them, WAME is one of them. The another is going to be the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. So it is the term International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. So that is the full name. And they are also going to give you the authentication that how you are going to, face when you are going to face the publication misconduct. So how you are going to give the complaint. It is one of the agency which works like COPE and WAVE, and it is going to help you in avoiding the publication misconduct. Any other thing? I hope everyone likes the new best practices in the research.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Ritu ma'am, and thank you for having that patience. Thank you.
You explained today's topic, ma'am, very nicely, very clearly, and in detail. So I hope, scholars, that today's lecture will be helpful in your research work.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
You gave me a valuable time.